So, welcome back to Your Anxious Child 5-Minute Solutions. This is Dr. Ted Plimpton, and today we are going to continue with our series of interviews with experts. And today we have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Lawrence Cohen, who is the author of several well-received books on children. But in particular today, I'd like to bring our attention to the Playful Parenting, an exciting new approach to raising children that will help you nurture close relationships, solve behavior problems, and encourage confidence. But more importantly, for our purposes, is this awesome book called The Oppposite of Worry, the playful parenting approach to childhood anxieties and fears. So, thank you, Larry.
Oh, thanks, Ted.
Okay, so Larry, you have put playfulness at the kind of center of your kind of approach in dealing with kind of childhood anxieties. Tell me why that is so central to your approach in dealing with anxious children.
Well, I think that I always think about play and emotional sensitivity, emotional connection as the twin pillars, but play is the one that's forgotten. Play is the one that goes out the window when things are tense. And so that's why I put it at the center, is because it's not the only thing. We also have the emotional side, but the play is the forgotten side.
Now, is it, does being playful, is this simply the Trojan horse, shall we say, that allows you to sneak in other interventions, or is it really central to the whole process of helping anxious children?
Oh, I think it's really central. I think that play is how children learn just about everything, or the best way that they learn everything. And so a child who is scared of going to the dentist or scared of dogs, let's say, for example, all the lectures in the world about safety and about how it's fine and all the reassurance in the world is not going to reach an anxious child. And parents of anxious children know that they have just been reassuring and reassuring and reassuring, and they'll give all the facts and the logic, and the child is still anxious. But if the child can play games where they're the dentist and they're coming chasing after you, and you're, oh no, or they're the dog, or they are the protector, they protect you from the scary little stuffed animal dog, the little stuffed puppy, and they're like, and you're scared of it, and they come and protect you. They get to switch that role. Instead of being the scared one, they get to be the scary one or the brave one. And that playful shift changes things way more than reassurance and logic does.
So, yeah, you talked about one of the central parts of this playfulness is engaging in games of role reversal.
Yeah.
And you're just referring to it, could you just elaborate a little bit more in terms of how one does that with anxious children?
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty simple formula. It's, hey, I've noticed that you get nervous about X, or I've noticed that there's lots of fears around Y. And then you say, let's play a game about that. And just that reaction with a sort of a smile and a relaxed tone, let's play a game about that, is very different than how children are normally thinking. Normally, they want to avoid the whole topic.
Right.
They don't want to think about it. They don't want to do it. And when we talk about it, we are very serious. You have to go to the dentist anyway. You have to go outside. You can't do this. What's the matter with you? There's nothing to be afraid of. So they want to avoid. We want to be serious, and it's a dead end. But if we are relaxed and playful, hey, let's play a game about this, well, the game is likely to be one of these role reversal games, where instead of the scared one, they're the scary one or the protective one. And this lets them inhabit a new role. And I think it really has deep neurological effects. It's not that the play is not some extra little thing. The play actually has a big impact on the neurobiology in the child. And so it's retraining the brain that, hey, this emotion is okay. Because what happens with anxious children is they start to get a little worried, a little nervous, a little fearful, and then they flood and they get so much of that feeling that they can't cope.
Mm-hmm.
And so the play lets them have emotional energy along with giggling and fun and connection, and that's where the healing happens.
Yeah, you had mentioned in your book that the play may activate the entire brain, or more, or several parts of the brain, rather than just.
Exactly. We think about the brain has a number of major pathways.
Mm-hmm.
So each emotion is a pathway, and each sense, like touch and taste and hearing, is a pathway, and language is a pathway. And when a child is locked in one emotion, like fear,
Mm-hmm.
they are using a tiny sliver of their brain.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're on high alert,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just high alert, high alert, high alert. Or they're on this future danger pathway. What if? What if? What if? And the play activates the whole brain, and that gets them out of that stuck spot. And there isn't really anything better than play to activate your whole brain.
Mm-hmm.
You're using emotion, you're using logic, you're using your body. So the child is not just talking about, is it dangerous or not? They're chasing you,
Uh-huh.
or they're jumping up and down, or they're pretending. One of my favorite games, it's not exactly a role reversal game, it's similar, is the child is a spy or a detective,
Uh-huh.
or a scientist,
Mm-hmm.
in relation to their anxiety. So, for example, there was this boy who had nightmares,
Mm-hmm.
and they made him very fearful, and the fear gave him nightmares, and the nightmares gave him fears, and he decided he was going to be a spy and spy on his anxiety
Uh-huh.
and his nightmares. And so once we talked about the general idea, he ran with it, and he developed it himself, what he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So he came up with this idea to go to his bedroom early, before bedtime, and hide behind his bed. And he came running out a few minutes later. He had this butterfly net.
Mm-hmm.
And he came running out to his parents in the other room and says, I caught it, I caught it. I caught my anxiety, and I tricked it. And I was there first, because usually I'm in bed, and it comes and sneaks up on me.
Uh-huh.
This time I snuck up on it, and I caught it. And this gives children a tremendous sense of power over their own emotions.
Great. How fun is that? Now,
Yeah.
you know, some parents are going to be listening to you and going, "Oh my God, I am not playful."
Yeah.
Oh my God. Now what? Now this.
Right. So all I can say is welcome to the club. I was a very anxious kid. I was a very anxious young adult. I was not especially playful when I became a father, and I really had to learn it. I really did it by practice. I literally practiced in front of the mirror, being goofy and making faces. I kept it simple. With young children, you fall over and they laugh.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not that complicated. They get a little older, and it's like, oh, let's pretend. Some adults panic when the child says, let's pretend.
Mm-hmm.
But just start out slow, be silly, be goofy. The main thing is forget about being dignified.
Mm-hmm.
Parenting is not a dignified profession.
Yep.
It goes much better if you just decide, okay, I don't have to be dignified all the time. And the other thing is be physical, because as an anxious kid, I lived in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of reading, I watched TV, I thought, I daydreamed, and I was not very athletic. Mm-hmm. And I had to learn as a parent that parenting is a full contact sport. And so it's not, you can't just sit on the couch and parent. You got to get on the floor, you got to roll around. Another one of my favorite games about helping children with fears is pillow fighting and wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like surprising. What does that have to do with getting over a fear? But one way to do it is you just generally pillow fight, just wild pillow fight, and it gives children a sense of fun and confidence, and using their body. Mm-hmm. Instead of being frozen in fear, they're using their body. But the other thing you can do is to say, okay, I'm a math problem and you have to tackle me.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm the bully at school and you have to tackle me, or whatever they're afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the problem. And we have this pun in English where you tackle a person, like you grab them and tackle them to the floor, or you tackle a problem, meaning you solve a hard problem. And so I used that pun to do this game. I'm the problem, you have to tackle me.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it physical,
Mm-hmm.
with, when you have anxiety, and I know this from the inside, you wander around in your head and you race around in your head and you chase your own tail in your head. And it doesn't get better doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot think your way out of fear and anxiety, even though anxious people try to.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get it physical. You have to get it out into the body.
Okay.
Another example is, child says, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach. And you say, well, how fast are they moving? And you have them flap their arms like wings.
Oh, my goodness.
How fast those butterflies are fluttering around in their stomach.
Okay, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it gives this body awareness because,
mm-hmm.
like I said, as an anxious child, I knew this. I was totally out of touch with my body.
Mm-hmm.
And anxious children usually are.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of so much talking about the content of the fear,
mm-hmm.
I like to ask children, what are you noticing in your body right now?
Mm-hmm.
Is any places hot or cold? Because anxiety changes the blood flow in your body.
Mm-hmm.
So you get hot areas, cold areas. What's happening in your gut? What's happening in your chest? What's happening in your throat? What's happening in your muscles? And that awareness actually helps reduce the anxiety. It seems weird. You focus on it, it should make it worse, but actually you're focusing on a different part, the physical sensations.
One of the things that you talked about in your book in terms of developing kind of an awareness of this was having a rating scale for how anxious you are. And I wonder, this is kind of a two-part kind of question. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on that. And then also speak to another point that you mentioned, which is how you respond to a child depends upon where they are on this arousal scale.
Exactly.
One, to quote you roughly, we do different things for children who are engaged in fight-flight compared to children who are immobilized. And I wonder if you could kind of elaborate on this kind of important point.
Sure, absolutely. So just about every child and adult with anxiety that I work with, I ask them to make up a scale from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, whatever they like. We'll do 1 to 10 just to keep it simpler. And what I usually say is, okay, so imagine that 10 is, ah! And I like to make faces and do nonverbal, because emotions are not verbal.
Mm-hmm.
We say use your words, but words are gravy. Words are the extra last little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Most of emotion is nonverbal. So 10 is, ah! And 1 is, ah! And I give this look like I'm relaxing on the beach. Where are you right now? And the child will say, or the adult will say, where they are right then. And where were you when you were really upset, like when you talked about what happened yesterday? Where were you then? What number? And so they get this idea, and it's really great for kids to draw it. So there was this one boy who called it a fearometer.
Mm-hmm.
And so he drew his fearometer and he drew faces for what a 10 looked like and what a 5 looked like and what a 1 looked like. And then your child's upset, they're scared, they're anxious. Instead of saying, what are you upset about? What are you anxious about? Use your words. They can't use their words yet.
Mm-hmm.
Instead it's, oh, what number are you? And numbers are a bridge between raw emotion, which has no words at all, and calmly talking about something. Mm-hmm. And we expect children to calmly talk to us about their turmoil of emotion. Well, it's too much. They can't. But the number is the bridge. It's like a stepping stone between those. So I always use this number scale. I use it also if I'm teaching relaxation. So, okay, right now what's your number? Let's say it's a 6. And then, okay, let's do this relaxation technique, deep breathing or counting backwards. And then, okay, what's the number now? And of course, sometimes they'll say, still 6.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, okay, that's fine, let's try it again. Or they'll say, now it's 5 3/4. Like, wow, it went down from 6 to 5 3/4. So that's the basis of the fearometer, the scale. And it has a lot of applications. And one of them is that, as you were saying, you do different things at 9 or 10 than at 5 or 6. Okay? So at 9 or 10 on a 10-point scale, you're not going to get anywhere talking. They are beyond the ability to talk and use logic. So trying to logically talk a child out of their emotion when they're at 9 or 10 is never going to work. At 9 or 10, you need intense physical intervention. Ice-cold water is the best.
Wow.
All mammals have a dive reflex, it's called, where cold water lowers your heart rate very fast. And so if you can, you stick your head under the water and hold your breath for 10 seconds. You can get a Ziploc bag with ice cold water in it and put it over your face and hold your breath for 10 seconds. Of course, a milder thing is just splash ice cold water in your face. And this rapidly lowers your heart rate. That's a good 9 or 10.
Okay.
Jumping up and down, screaming, playing really loud music. When I was a teenager, that was the birth of headbanger music. So headbanging music, like you don't actually bang your head, but raucous, wild. A warm bath is a great relaxation thing, but not when you're at 10.
Okay.
At 10, a warm bath is going to make your skin crawl.
Right.
And then this is part of what happens is we try to get children to calm down. Oh, take some deep breaths and take a warm bath and think about your nice, safe place when they're at 9 or 10, and it doesn't work. That's a great thing if you're at 4 or 5.
Okay.
So at 4 or 5, you do these milder techniques, the warm bath, the deep breathing, the imagine successfully coping with the problem. These are great things to do at 4 or 5. So this is the other way that I use that number scale. And then the other question you asked was about fight, flight, freeze.
Right.
This is a little different from the numbers because you can be at 10 in frozen, immobilized, paralyzed with fright, or you can be at 10 with fighting, lashing out, meltdown, or 10 with screaming, crying, thrashing around on the floor. There's a lot of different ways of being at 10.
Okay.
But the response to fight, flight, or freeze is different. Because when a child is in that freeze response, we want them to move. We want them to get unstuck. And so we probably don't do relaxation techniques for freeze.
Okay.
Because you're already not moving.
Gotcha.
You want movement. So it could be relaxation like yoga maybe, slow movements, or fast movements. So vigorous exercise, or slow movements like yoga, or even slower movements are good for this freeze response. Slow motion punch, slow motion block. For like somebody who's been in a car accident and they have this leftover fears from the trauma of the car accident. There's often unfinished physical things that they didn't get to do because it was too fast. So their head hit the windshield and they didn't get to put their hand up and block it. So just in slow motion with an adult loving guidance, it's like, you didn't get to block the windshield coming up, and so slow motion, put your hands up and block that. And often there's like a big release of emotion and a kind of a shaking with like, and it kind of all better thing that happens when you complete the motion in slow motion. So all these are for the freeze. Now for fighting.
Wait, if we could just back up
Sorry.
1 second.
Yeah.
How could a parent, I think most parents would have a good sense of when their child is in fight or flight.
Yeah.
But how would they know their child is in kind of a freeze state or a mobilized state? How would they know that as opposed to just being, say, a pill?
Yeah. It is, it can be hard to tell. I think that often there's kind of a pallor. There's like their skin tone is kind of a little bit ashen and gray. Their muscles are a little bit droopy. It's different from running and hiding under the bed, which is the flight, right? That's the hiding response. It's more just sort of sitting, kind of blank, numb, and I guess that's the best way I can describe it.
Probably also their posture is kind of
hunched,
slunched.
like collapsed kind of posture. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
There's also a kind of a deer in the headlights look. That's a different kind of a freeze. And this freeze response is related to when animals play possum. So they pretend to be dead in order not to get eaten by their predators, or so they'll just play dead. So it's a combination of a fear response and a good idea.
Right. It's sort of like when they can't do anything else or they can't engage in fight or flight.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so before I interrupted you, you were about to kind of give some suggestions about what to do with fight or flight when the child's in more of that mode.
Yeah. So I think about primal comfort. Often parents get locked in this reassurance, and the reassurance is rooted in logic and information. And it doesn't reach the heart of the child and what they're feeling. And so primal comfort is what you would do with a baby, even if it's a 10-year-old. The baby, you don't bother with logic because you know that they don't have the logic. But the 10-year-old is misleading because if they weren't flooded with anxiety, they could handle the logic, but now they can't. So primal comfort is just holding and rocking. I'm here, these murmurs. So you use some language, of course, because we're verbal people. But it's very short. It's not arguments. It's not, well, you know that you've never been bitten by a dog and this dog is friendly. That's way too much verbiage. It's the, oh, I get it. Oh, I understand. Oh, I'm right here. I'm with you. Oh, that's scary. So you're reflecting, acknowledging their fear. You're not dismissing it. A lot of parents are afraid to empathize with and acknowledge the child's fear because they think that means you're right to be scared and they'll be more scared. But it's an incredible paradox. If you say to an anxious child, oh boy, you're really scared, I really get that, they will relax. But if we say, what are you scared about that for? That's not going to hurt you. Then they're going to be more anxious because their thought is, you don't get it. You don't understand. But if you feel understood, you instantly relax.
And then they're open to other types of communication.
Exactly. Once that crisis is passed, then you can have the information, but not when they're deep in the feeling. Then when they're hiding under the bed, so like that flight response, if you drag them out, they're just going to be totally terrified and flooded. And so sitting nearby, so you sit near the edge of the bed on the ground, and they're under the bed, and you act like you've got all the time in the world. Okay, maybe inside you're like, I got to get this kid out of here. We got to get to grandma's house or whatever it is you're doing. But any rush will just make the child lock up more. But it's like, I'm just going to sit right here. That seems like a safe place to you under there. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of safe places in the world, but that sure feels like a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not fighting it. You're acknowledging it, but you're also not just leaving the child alone under the bed. And well, when you get good and ready, you'll come out, which is, kind of mean.
Right. Okay. um, Now, I think we should also just kind of touch on kind of some of the kind of specific content of your book. What is this talk about chickens in your book? I mean, is this a book on poultry, or is this a book on anxious children?
Yeah, I wanted to call the book The Second Chicken, and my editor was like, nobody's going to know what that is until they read the book. And so I was like, okay, fine. But I have this idea called The Second Chicken, and it comes from a science experiment I did when I was in 8th grade. And I didn't know what to do for my science experiment, but my mother ran a nursery school, and they hatched chickens every year. They had the eggs under the lights, and the chickens hatched, and these little kids could see the miracle of life and all that, these city kids. So I thought this was great, and I took care of the chickens and the eggs on the weekends and holidays. I was, 13, and I thought this was really cool and fun. And I found out about this experiment where chickens will actually play dead, the same way like we think about playing possum, but a lot of animals do this. Snakes do this, and chickens actually do this. So if you take a baby chicken, or you could do it with a grown-up chicken, which I never tried, but I did it with a little baby chicken, and you hold it gently on its side so that one eye is looking up, and you look down into its eye, and then you let go, it will stay there immobilized for about a minute.
Wow.
And then it will pop back up and walk around like nothing happened. Well, that's one chicken. Okay. Now, if you take 2 chickens and you immobilize both of them, and you hold them both down on their sides, and that you look at them, and that actually makes them more likely to think it's like a hawk grabbing them.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what they really think, but that's. But you hold them both down, and they stay immobilized much longer, like let's say 5 minutes instead of 1 minute. And the idea is each one is looking at the other one, and it's thinking, well, I don't see a hawk, but that guy over there is still laying down immobilized, so it must see the hawk, so I'm not getting up. Mm-hmm. And the other one's thinking exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. Now, if you take 2 chickens and you immobilize one of them, and the other one's walking around, and the first one you set it down and you immobilize it, it will pop up after 5 seconds because it looks over. It's like, that chicken's walking around. It's not in any trouble. It's fine. I guess it's safe. I'll pop up. And so from this, when I started seeing more and more anxious children, and I think it's on the rise in our society today, and I started seeing more and more anxious children, hearing more and more from parents that I can't reassure my child no matter how much I try, I thought about this experiment. I hadn't thought about it in years, and it came back to me, and I thought, let's try the second chicken technique. Mm-hmm. So I developed the second chicken technique, which is basically to be that second chicken. Uh-huh. Now, when our children are anxious, they don't just look at us and say, oh, you're not anxious, you're fine. Uh-huh. You're relaxed, so I'll be relaxed. Because we're more complicated. We have a much bigger brain than a chicken. So it takes more than that. So a child, sees the world through the anxious filter. Uh-huh. So we can't just be happy and relaxed and expect that our child will then be happy and relaxed. Mm-hmm. We have to draw them out. And so the second chicken technique is, could you look in my eyes and tell me what you see there? Mm-hmm. Because a child who's anxious is lost in the what if only this had happened. Oh no. And that's all they can see. And they look out in the world and they see danger. Mm-hmm. But if we draw them out and say, could you look at me and tell me what you see there? Then they're forced. Well, I shouldn't say forced because it's a gentle technique. They're drawn out of that locked up, scary spot to see something very different, to look in your eyes. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, if you're anxious too, you might not want to do this exactly the same way.
Right.
right? Now, first of all, you might have your anxieties, but you're probably not scared that there's monsters under the bed.
Right.
You're scared your child will never go to sleep.
Right.
But you're not scared of the bed. So, or you're not scared of, that nobody will talk to me at school. Scared of that. So you could say, yeah, look in my eyes. Now, if you are scared of the same thing, if your child is scared of kidnappers and you're scared of kidnappers, then it's probably why your child is scared of kidnappers is because you're scared of it. Well, you wouldn't say, look in my eyes. You see, they're going to see fear.
Right.
Instead, you've got to really be the second chicken together. You've got to really do it together. What I suggest in that case is to say, you know what? I get nervous about that too sometimes. And this is what I'm doing about it. And we live in a safe neighborhood, and we have a lock on the door, and we, and whatever you do for safety. But you also talk about what you do about your feelings. And this is something that parents have never been taught to do with their children. To say, even though I'm confident and I do everything I need to do for safety, I still sometimes have leftover feelings. I have some extra anxiety about this. And so I do yoga, or I splash cold water on my face, or I take deep breaths, or I talk back to the fear and I say, oh, that's not going to happen, or oh, it's fine, and we're okay. And you tell them what you do. Now, if you don't know what to tell them that you do, that means you got to go find out for your own anxiety, and then come back and tell them what you learned. Because it's no surprise a lot of anxious children have anxious parents.
Right.
And we've managed to cope in life, sort of enough, but it comes to helping our children. Sometimes we hit this fact that, oh boy, I still have some anxieties in there I never really dealt with.
So, before we stop, I just I'd like just kind of touch upon one more aspect of your book that kind of readers could kind of look forward to hearing about, which is what you call the flame model of emotion.
Sure.
And just kind of explain a little bit about what they might anticipate reading about and why that's important.
Yeah, so there's a chapter in The Opposite of Worry that is called Dr. Spock versus Mr. Spock. And the title comes from, of course, Dr. Benjamin Spock, who, starting in the 1940s and then becoming really popular in the 1960s, gave this message to parents that your children have emotions, and that our job as parents is not just to feed our children, but to say, oh, you're angry, and I understand, and oh, you're scared, I understand. And this was a revolution, in parenting. The recognition of emotions and expressing them is a good idea. And then there's Mr. Spock from Star Trek, who was half human, half Vulcan, and he tried not to have any emotions at all. And he thought emotions are bad news. Emotions cloud your thinking. Emotions get you in trouble. Emotions make you do stupid things. Don't have any emotions. And they're both true, right? It is true. Emotions cloud our thinking, and it's also true we need to express them. So the flame model of emotion is just my shorthand for how to think about how emotions work. That actually, children who are anxious tend to be anxious about their own emotions, in addition to anything else they're afraid of. And so it's really great to just help them understand this is how an emotion works. And most adults were never taught this is how an emotion works. There's no curriculum in school about, here's one of the most important things that you'll have in your life, for your whole life, but we're not going to ever talk about it, except to say, don't do that, right? So the flame model of emotion is that emotions start with a spark. And the spark is usually a thought. And the thought is, so your child wants a cookie and you say no, and the thought is, that's not fair. Or I really want that. And then you have the emotion. And the emotion might be jealousy because my brother got a cookie and I didn't. Or the emotion might be anger, which is why do you get to stop me from having a cookie? I want it, and you won't let me have it. Or the emotion might be sadness. It's like, oh, I want it so badly. And that's the flame, the emotion itself. Mm-hmm. And the emotion has just that essence of the emotion, sadness, anger. And it has the physical, the tight muscles, the tears, the wanting a shoulder to cry on, the wanting to run and hide. Emotion of shame, it's like you turn red, your face flushes. Emotions also have what's called an action urge. Mm-hmm. So the reason we have emotions is to drive our behavior in ways that hopefully are helpful mm-hmm. to us. And emotions are really fast. It's before we can think. So you hear a rustle in the woods and you run or you check it out before you know what it is. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have them. So there's an urge. So the action urge for fear is to run or hide or fight if we have to, and freeze if that's the last resort. The action urge for anger is to lash out. Mm-hmm. The action urge for shame is to hide yourself, hide your face. So every emotion has an action urge. And then you get to decide what you're going to do with that action urge. Mm-hmm. And this is a big part of what we call self-control and self-regulation is, okay, I have the urge, I have the impulse, do I do it or not? And of course, young children, they have the urge, they do it. Mm-hmm. And a long process of maturity is, okay, I have the urge, but now every adult has had the experience of wanting to hit someone, uh-huh. and they decide not to. The wanting to is the action urge of the emotion. The deciding not to comes from a different place. So that's from a different part of the brain. The thinking about, well, what kind of trouble am I going to get in if I do that? And I don't want to be that kind of person. And all the reasons that we don't hit the guy who bugged us. And then one other thing in the model is the fuel for the fire. Uh-huh. So a child is hungry, tired, had a bad day. That's going to fuel any emotion. So every parent has experienced this, right? Tiny little thing happens and it's a big meltdown because there was so much fuel on the fire from being tired or wrung out or something. Basic beliefs can be a fuel on the fire. Mm-hmm. So nobody loves me. Or I always, I never get what I want. So if you have a basic belief, I never get what I want, and then mom says no to the second cookie, then you're going to have a much bigger reaction than if your basic belief in life is, I'll pretty much get what I want most of the time. I didn't get this extra cookie, but that was a long shot anyway. Uh-huh. Right? So the same event, no cookie, can give totally different emotional response depending on the belief system, mm-hmm. which is part of this fuel. So that's kind of that's the short summary of this. Okay.
So, in your book, you give many kind of compelling examples about how you can use kind of a playful approach with children who are anxious, and a lot of neat suggestions. And it seems like such a kind of a tremendous kind of resource that would create a kind of an urgency to address these problems in the elementary school years. Yeah. So, but the middle school child, they may not buy some of these kind of approaches. And yes. Are we lost, or is there anything we can do with a middle school child?
I don't think that we're lost at all. You're certainly right that you can't really bring out the puppets and the stuffed animals with your middle school child. They'll just roll their eyes, and they'll actually rolling their eyes because that changes their emotion from what it was before. So maybe that's not so bad. But I give middle school and teenage children the book to read themselves. Mm-hmm. It's like. Your parents are not going to be out on the floor playing these games with you, but maybe this will help you understand on your own. And some of them, forget it, I'm not reading a book, and some of them were like, oh, wow, that's really helpful, really interesting. The other thing is, I talked about the spy and the boy with the butterfly net.
Yep.
Well, there is a middle school version of that, which is to be a scientist. It's like, and you get a lab notebook, and it's okay. What do I know about my anxiety? It comes up more at night, right before bedtime. Oh, that's an interesting observation. What does that mean? What if I change my bedtime routine? Would that change it? And so they're really a scientist. Or, oh, I never noticed this before. It happens on Fridays. Why does it happen on Fridays? Well, we always have a quiz on Fridays. Oh, that's the link there. And then you have experiments, and so, when mom or dad says, oh, just go to the dance, you'll have fun. Well, the child's only response is either they go and they're frozen in the corner, or they're like, no, I won't have a good time. Nobody will talk to me. And they're stuck. But if the parent says, there's 3 dances this year, middle school dances, and so that means you get to do 3 experiments. And I know there's part of you that would love to go, and there's a part of you that is like, no, that's not for me. It's too much. I don't like it. I'm shy. So you get to do 3 experiments. And one experiment might be you go and you pretend like you're an anthropologist. And you're just seeing, okay, look, are there any other shy people there? Okay? So this is an incredible thing, right? Because I know as a shy person myself, I thought I was the only one. Everybody else, and you look at Facebook, right? So middle school, you've got this added burden of on Facebook, everybody but you is having the best time in the world. And has the best friends and the best time with their friends. And so, but you go to the dance and you're an anthropologist and you see, is there anybody else who's shy? You will absolutely see other people who are shy. And this is an incredible knowledge base then to develop. And then then the other thing is, okay, the people who aren't shy, what is it they do? How are they acting? And then can you come home and practice that in front of the mirror? Right? So once you're in middle school, you kind of have to be the captain of your own ship with this. And it means that you have to have motivation. For me, I had 2 motivations when I was in high school, and for dealing with anxiety, not just living with it. One is I wanted to be in a play, and the other was I wanted to go on a date. Right? And you'll be happy to know I accomplished both of those things.
Oh yes.
Yeah. But it required using that motivation to do something about my anxieties. But other people nagging me about it at that point was not going to help at all. And, let's play a game about it. That would not have helped me at that age. But it would have been helpful for me to have some guidance on, okay, how do it? Now I'm motivated. What do I do about it? I kind of figured it out on my own. It would have been nice to have some guidance about, like, take things step by step. Right. Draw this. One thing middle schoolers often really respond to is you draw a comfort zone map. And the comfort zone map is basically a blob or circle in the middle filled with things that are easy to do and within your comfort zone. And then what's on the edge of your comfort zone. And then what's way far out. And it really helps you map it out. And there you see it right there. And then it's like, okay, now let's put a red circle around the ones that are like, I want to do that. Because I know where skydiving is on my comfort zone map. But I don't want to. I don't care. Right? If I really wanted to, I would have to say, I'm going to work for it. Right? I'm going to go do it. But the fact is, I'm happy. I'm fine with that not being in my comfort zone. Whereas, I take my dog to the park, and I feel a little shy about talking to people at the park, because even though I do public speaking and blah, 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 I'm still a shy person inside.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it's out of my comfort zone to chat with people at the park, but I do it.
Right.
And I do it because that, unlike skydiving, that's meaningful to me. That's something that I really want to have. I don't want to come home and sit there thinking, oh, I didn't talk to anybody at the park.
Great. Well, we're about out of time.
Yeah.
But I'd just like to kind of note that you have had some good luck actually giving your book to teenagers and having them read that book as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So.
Yeah, and adults too, right?
Right, and adults too. Yes. So it's a potentially multi-generational kind of resource. So so thank you so much, Larry, and his book, The Opposite of Worry: The Playful Parenting Approach to Childhood Anxiety and Fears. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Ted. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
So